Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and a lot of you guys have been asking me, how does Enhancement and Elemental feel in Shadowlands? Shaman as a class with its 2 DPS specs has gotten quite a few changes. The biggest change is the direction the Blizzard is taking the Maelstrom to, where they're removing Maelstrom building spending mechanic completely, bringing Shaman to more the original glory of, if you have the cooldowns, just press the button and you will do the damage. But a lot of you guys have asked, how does it actually feel to play? And in the current alpha, I just want to give you guys a bit of current footage to look at in terms of seeing the gameplay of Enhancement, describing the gameplay of Enhancement, and towards the end of the video, I do want to comment a little bit about what I think Blizzard could do to spice up the specs. They've done a good job so far, but which direction could they take them to continue going in a good direction that makes the spec fun to play? So the biggest changes with Enhancement Shaman is you no longer have the Maelstrom bar. This also accounts for Elemental Shaman. So the way that the specs play now is you have access to all your abilities. And Blizzard has been able to manage the damage numbers appropriately, where Elemental still has a little bit of this builder spender, and there are going to be certain abilities that are supposed to be hard hitters, but right now it seems that you're more of a sustain based spec. Every ability does a set amount of damage. You don't really build up to a specific playstyle or specific point where you start doing more damage. So you kind of start steady off the start, in a sense. Normally Elemental will feel like you're lightning bolting and lava bursting, and it doesn't really do much until the big earth shock, and then you've really made your mark. With Enhancement, it felt like you have to go for Rockbiter, get your Frostbrand enchant, get your Flame Tongue enchant, get some procs, and then once you got some Maelstrom to really burn, then you're dumping all that Maelstrom into Storm Strikes and hoping that certain abilities reset the proc of a Storm Strike. This changes the playstyle for Enhancement and Elemental to make it more sustained. Your abilities are going to have a bit more punch at the very start, which I really like that playstyle about Elemental. Just being able to Lava Burst, and that's actual meaningful damage instead of just a builder for a bigger spender later, feels much better for Enhance as the Shaman spec without some massive cooldown to buff their damage, but rather doing damage constantly at all times as long as you're pressing buttons. For Enhancement, there is a little bit of RAM to the spec and to the playstyle. I guess you could have a little bit less RAM depending on playstyles, but Enhance definitely has a bit of this modularity about it, at least in the alpha. Maybe it's a false perception of modularity, but it definitely feels like the spec has a bit different ways of playing it, at least right now. Take a look at Enhancement. The biggest change that happened to it is the Maelstrom weapon change. Maelstrom weapon now will allow you to, on ability uses, build a buff called Maelstrom weapon. For every stack of Maelstrom weapon, you reduce the cast of your next nature-based ability by 20% and reduce its mana cost by 20%. Essentially, at 5 stacks, you're able to use abilities like Chain Lightning, Lightning Bolt, Healing Surge, and even Chain Heal on allies in order to provide a little bit extra support or damage. And that's essentially how the spec is going to play. Technically, as an Enhancement, you could just cast Lightning Bolt from afar, which is weird, or Chain Lightning for that matter, but you'll get burned out of mana pretty quickly. So the idea is you go into melee, you build up this buff, which allows you to use certain cast-based abilities instantly, and that is to be weaved into your rotation, which is what the old Enhancement Shaman used to do. On top of it, Flame Shock returns too, so you'll be trying to pop Flame Shock all over your enemies, of which Blizzard adds a talent in future to allow you to spread Flame Shock easier as part of like this cleave-based playstyle. There is a talent that kind of lets you do that, but I don't like the way it works right now, but it is there. You also have filler abilities as well as main abilities. Storm Strike is going to be a hard hitter, Lava Lash right after. You will have Rockbiter weapon as a filler when there's nothing else to press. There's also Crash Lightning, which is an AoE ability from BFA. But sometimes it feels like it's a decent ability for maybe single target situations when there's nothing else to press. Storm Strike on cooldown, Lava Lash on cooldown, and Crash Lightning feels like it does more damage than Rockbiter on pure single target. So it seems that you'll be using the abilities in a priority based system. While playing Enhancement though, I found ways to play the spec in 2 ways. One is a very base Enhancement that plays very, basic. And another one that actually is very modular, allowing me to play a whole weird wacky playstyle that feels closer to what BFA Enhancement feels. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the OG playstyle of Enhancement, where you will have Lava Lash as your main, one of your abilities that you'll be using. You'll also want to make sure that you'll have Flame Tongue weapon in your offhand to buff the damage of that Lava Lash. And then we took a bunch of talents to complement this playstyle as well. The talents that I decided to go for in particular are Elemental Spirits, Sundering, and Searing Assault. Sundering is the same Sundering of BFA. Elemental Spirits is for an extra passive because I feel Enhancement just has way too many abilities already on the bars. I would love some more passive talents because this is already a very busy spec. And then Searing Assault, because I felt like it felt well into this fire-based playstyle. It was thematically cool. Searing Assault feels like it does good damage on its own, and since I'm not going for a big nature playstyle, Overcharge just felt like maybe too much to work with. And the playstyle for Enhancement is very simple. Make sure to keep your Flame Lash or Flame Shock on the enemy at all times. Make sure to be dropping down your Searing Totem whenever possible, and Storm Strike and Lava Lash, and keep all your abilities on cooldown. Of course, you'll want to prioritize the abilities with the highest amount of damage, like Storm Strike and Sundering and Lava Lash, to make sure that those abilities are on cooldown before others, so it's a priority system. So it feels good, but with a low amount of haste on Shadowlands, I mean, there's just empty globals. It makes me wonder if there's going to be moments when you'll actually just stand there and cast a lightning bolt into the enemy's face, because you can, and it does quite a bit of damage, and even with a few stacks of Maelstrom weapon, it would be a faster lightning bolt, even though it's not going to be instant, but like, I don't know, half a second or maybe a little under a second of a cast of lightning bolt could still be worthy damage for Enhancement when it comes to actually doing single target damage in bosses. But it feels pretty base. It has a good set of utility. Feels pretty simplistic, but the low haste kind of holds the spec back. So I made another one that felt more active because it felt more proc based. I could be wrong, it could be a big placebo thing on procs, but I would have shared with this build, the nature build. So while testing on stream, I actually noticed a Flame Tongue weapon, while it's a good enchant, it felt that double enchanting my main and offhand weapon with Windfury weapon gave me more procs. I could be completely wrong on that. I wish I could put this into Sims and put this into Recount, but Blizzard disabled all add-ons on the alpha. But call it placebo or not, it felt like I got more procs for Storm Strikes and Lightning Bolts, double enchanting both of my weapons with Windfury. Since I'm double enchanting, I might as well take off Lava Lash because now it does very meaningless damage. And we decided to also on stream to change it up a little, go for Earthen Spike, Stormkeeper for extra big lightning bolts, and Overcharge for even more lightning bolts. So essentially I'm trying to dump as much damage as I can with all the procs while Earthen Spike is up. Since none of these abilities cost a Maelstrom, all of them just on cooldown, so I can kind of line up all these procs and abilities with Earthen Spike and then kind of hope for procs. I started using my Crash Lightning as more of a filler whenever Storm Strike is down, and it seems that Crash Lightning has a higher chance to proc either Storm Strike, Stormkeeper procs, where Storm Strike can be used again, even though it was on cooldown, and also seems to give me back Maelstrom a little bit quicker than a Lava Lash would, and altogether it turned out for a very fast-paced playstyle. This does make me wonder if Blizzard wants to keep Enhancement, as well as certain other specs in the game, modular, as in you are able to use certain talents and builds and will get legendaries at a future time with Shadowlands to play with. Are we going to be using all these talents and legendaries to create our own builds? In terms of like kind of how back in vanilla you had, yes, you have access to a bunch of abilities, but based on which talents you would take, like in the vanilla style of rows, certain abilities you would press and certain you would forgo because of the talent build that you put yourself together. So this build I went for a more big lightning bolt build, doing 3k crits, which at level 57 cap for this dungeon was actually quite decent, or at least it felt decent. And it felt like there was never an empty global. You could see my screen lighten up a lot more than with the other build, which felt great. It felt very similar to the current BFA Shaman, where I just get Storm Strikes over and over and over and just keep spamming Storm Strikes for a good 30 seconds sometimes. So this was very, very different. This was interesting. And in a sense, I actually kind of preferred this playstyle just because it felt like there was more for me to do on screen. It felt like my screen was lighting up, more abilities to press, just felt a lot more active. And I could be wrong in terms of some of the things like getting more procs. It could be I simply just got lucky this pull, maybe because we have Bloodlust available and I just got more procs baseline. Maybe there is something to it, but it is interesting. And that's what I like about Enhancement right now. It has such a playstyle where there's a lot of possibilities and makes you want to explore and try different things and try new things. Like here again, I got a big Earth Spike into big procs for Lightning Bolt, trying to do as much damage, trying to kind of hope for procs here, Crash Lightning, hoping to get even more procs from abilities, and just kind of continuing from there. While on one hand it is fun playing Scientist with Enhancement Shaman, Elemental Shaman felt a lot different. Elemental Shaman felt like there are certain builds and talents that you can go for, but your core rotation never changes. You're still going to be slinging lightning bolts. You're still going to be using your lava burst. There is a talent where essentially makes your earth shock useless, technically, so you would actually literally take it off your bars. But the playstyle is very similar to, I guess in a sense, similar to what you have in BFA Shaman. So while you don't have a Maelstrom weapon, you still have a builder system. At the bottom below on my character, you can see Fulmination procs. As you go for lightning bolts and chain lightning, you build up Fulmination, which will make your Earthshock do more and more damage. When Fulmination caps, then your lightning bolt or your Earthshock does the most amount of damage. Chain lightning has a nice cool interaction. It will still build Fulmination, so that'll be good for single target, which might make chain lightning a 2-target, 3-target cleave must have in order to build up the damage. And also, as chain lightning strikes the enemy, it has a chance to build you up a buff, making your earthquake a shorter cast. And when you get 5 stacks, very much like Maelstrom weapon from Enhancement, it becomes an insta cast ability to drop down immediately. So it has a couple of these things happening. You can do single target build up for resources while also working on AoE at the same time, so it kind of weaves it into it, which is cool. You still, again, have a little bit of this builder spender playstyle, but the difference is you can really start having good damage from the start. You don't need to wait until you get your Fulmination procs all the way up. That's just extra bonus damage. And while it does a little bit, just your lava burst on its own, the crits do so much damage by themselves, it makes the spec feel very self-reliant and self-sustainable. Again, our stats are all over the place, and maybe with a lot more haste you could go for far more damage, but it seems that your base abilities from your lightning bolt to your lava burst, flame shock, all those abilities from the other talents like Stormkeeper, using those abilities will net you more damage by itself, which I think is a good thing for Enhancement. I've never really liked having so many specs where it's like, okay, let me press my one big cooldown, which is a GCD, and with changes to Battle for Azeroth, with everything being a GCD, sometimes it can feel great, and sometimes it can feel not that great. If you played Elemental Shaman in previous expansions, or you're playing Elemental Shaman right now in BFA, you won't really have a lot to relearn. So if you're trying to get a Shaman up and running and want to learn what the Shadowlands Shaman is going to play like, play an Elemental currently and trying to imagine how it plays without Maelstrom. That's the sense what Elemental is going to feel like in Shadowlands. If I had to actually even describe Elemental versus Enhancement against one another, Elemental feels like the all reliable. It doesn't really feel all that different to play. But in a sense, if you're looking for something new, you're not really going to find that from Elemental. So if you're looking for crazy cool new changes, you'll find Elemental quite boring. Enhancement, however, is going through quite a lot of changes. The spec went to a playstyle that it almost forgot about altogether, with the whole Maelstrom mechanic lasting for, what, 2 expansions now? So the Elemental Shaman is going to feel base. However, Enhancement is going to be something for a lot of people to relearn. And I feel both of those specs are not finalized. I feel that Elemental if Blizzard wanted to do anything with it at all. New talents, cool new things to spice up the gameplay, but maybe the Covenant abilities will do that on its own, so only time will tell. It's not bad, it just doesn't really feel like it has anything cool, new, or unique about it anymore. But maybe with better gear we'll really start seeing cool new builds and fun playstyles. So maybe there's just a waiting game. However, for Enhancement, I feel like it's a spec that's still in the progress. It's still in the works. It has a pretty bright future and a potential, but it's not finalized. At least by no measure does it feel finalized. However, it is a lot to learn, a lot to relearn. It feels way different. So I am interested to see kind of like what Blizzard will end up doing when it comes to Enhancement in the future. Does it want to be modular spec where you can craft your own builds? Or does it have a specific playstyle for us to select talents to kind of complement it? And kind of how are we going to be approaching these specs in the future? Only time will tell. But thank you guys so much for checking out this video. If you want to find out how Shamans play, they actually feel pretty great. It definitely has a lot of potential, but as we are right now on the alpha, none of the specs are finalized and none of the specs are at their end game, so we can only speculate. But in terms of the feel, even though they aren't finished, they really do feel good to play. Enhancement in particular, once you get used to it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts about Shamans. What do you think about them? Are you excited to play Shaman? May it be coming out into Shadowlands. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.